Awesome. Hello, everybody, and hello to Adam Neal, president of TPC Financial. Thanks so much for hopping on this call with me today, Adam. First off, I guess congrats, new baby in the house. Similar
Yeah,
to my situation, how's life treating you in terms of that?
yeah, it's an interesting adaptation, I guess. Obviously, trying to find time between work life, as you know, it can be a bit of a challenge here. So, finding those routines is obviously important, and trying to get those systems in place to make sure that I can be at my best when I show up to work in the morning.
Amen to that. I hear you on that. So Adam, I've known you, I can't even remember when I first met you. I think it was initially during dental school, but as president of TPC Financial, I'm wondering if you can give us a little overview of the history of the firm, what you guys do, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So the company actually had its origins with Tim Paziak. So Tim was kind of a one-stop shop, and he got into the industry as a social worker. And he ended up kind of going from social work into insurance and selling insurance. And when we look at kind of his pathway, he was working mostly with professionals. And one of the needs that professionals continually ask for is like, okay, well, yes, insurance is important, but how do I run my business? I find myself where all of my education is trying to be the best practitioner I can be, but no one's filling in the gaps elsewhere. So Tim then introduced some additional business services, other consulting, provided some investment management. So was selling mutual funds, and all of this is again sales based. And about 2000 and I think 2005, 2006. There was a shift, and we went away from a sales-based structure to a fee-based advisory structure. So it's not something that's necessarily prevalent in Canada. It's more of a US model where people are paying for advice and guidance, much in the way that you would pay an accountant or a lawyer, and the recommendations aren't sales-based. And if we look at who we work with, we primarily work with physicians and dentists. And me particularly, I almost exclusively work with dentists. And the unique situation that we find ourselves in is we have a significant amount of education going through the dental school and all of our undergrad. We get some business information in the form of somebody trying to sell you insurance while you're in dental school, or an accountant coming in and saying, hey, I'll do your tax returns for free as long as you work with me. And the banks are obviously giving out some pretty significant lines of credit, which frankly, you can get into a whole lot of trouble if we look at these as an unlimited source of funds. So we have all of these resources and responsibility, or so we think, but at the end of the day, we're thrust into a world where whether we're an associate, whether we actually choose to incorporate or not, we're running a business. And all of our education has been on the practical side of things and not really this environment that we're going to find ourselves in. So our focus as a company, and we've grown quite significantly because there's a growing demand for this, is to take stock of where you find yourself as a business owner. We have our lawyers, we have an accountant, we have a banker, we have an insurance agent, maybe we have someone doing our investments. There's all of these pieces that are kind of floating in the ether, and ultimately it's up to you to determine how to prioritize things, how to tie all these together, and really just you need to learn enough, but do you have the time to do so? So what we're able to do is come in and try and figure out what our goals and objectives are. Are we trying to buy a house? Are we trying to buy a dental practice? Take a look at some other items like, hey, I want to have a kid in a couple of years, or you know what, I want to potentially partner in with someone else. What does this associate agreement look like? So these are all items that you could definitely have an accountant look at. You could definitely have a lawyer look at. You could definitely have your banker look at. But these areas are so interconnected that we need to know the implications as it pertains to all of these other moving pieces. Not everyone is going to be exactly the same. The advice that we get from accountants and the advice that your colleagues have gotten from accountants, they're never going to be exactly the same as what the benefits are going to be to you and why we would want to structure things for you. So we go in and we really want to find out what we're trying to achieve, work backwards, and really just put things in front of clients and say, hey, here's a pathway to meeting your goals and objectives. Here's what you need to do to succeed. And if there's any changes, here's how we would go about making those changes.
So in terms of working backwards, can you kind of walk listeners through what that reverse engineering process looks like?
Oh, absolutely. So if we kind of rewind a little bit and we relate to what our expenditures were while we're in dental school, and we realize that, hey, I can get around my day-to-day life spending a couple $1,000s just for groceries and whatever else a 20-something-year-old can get away with spending, right? Now we fast forward a little bit, and now we're working and we want to buy a house. We have a family. I want to finally pay off my student debt, whether it's federal, provincial student loans or the bank issued prime minus 0.25 lines of credit that are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's a lot of other moving pieces now. And so at first, what we want to do is generally establish what someone kind of needs just for their day-to-day expenses. Effectively, this is our standard of living. From there, we say, okay, well, how quickly do we want to be out of debt? Do we want to direct absolutely everything towards our line of credit, and who cares about the tax implications of doing so? Or do we need to be cognizant of those tax implications, and maybe we stretch out our lines of credit a little bit longer? So in doing so, we just want to find out, okay, well, we know our basic lifestyle needs. Maybe we have a loan amount. We have our rent on top of that. We want to save up for a house. We can work backwards and say, okay, well, we need, maybe it's 10,000 a month, maybe it's 15, it doesn't matter. We don't know what it is specifically, but we'll find out. And then we work backwards and say, well, what are we earning? Now, if we're a newly practicing associate, well, your earnings are going to be whatever they happen to be, whatever your environment allows you to make. But we also want to scale in some growth. And so we have X amount in earnings, we have Y amount in expenses. So there's a delta. Whatever that excess amount is, we want to find out, well, are we setting it aside? Are we earmarking this for other goals and objectives? And is it going to be enough? And that's really the ultimate question. We break down financial planning into its kind of core goals here is, am I going to die with money or without money? Are my goals
I love it.
Achievable, right?
Keep it simple.
Exactly. And I mean, they say the perfect kind of financial plan, the most ideal long-term financial planning is when you bounce your check to the funeral home, right? Die with absolutely nothing. And of course, if you want to leave
die
money,
with zero.
Exactly, die with zero. And that's one of those things where we now have the ability, we have the technology to forecast all these things. Now, 20 years ago, it was a little bit more obscure, it was more difficult to find. You'd have to be throwing down different calculations on paper. But now there's the opportunity to really put all of these life decisions into context. And if there needs to be a change, what better time than now to either adjust our expectations or change habits, as opposed to kind of going about your business, coming up for air every 10 years and saying, maybe I'm doing okay, maybe I'm not. Let's just keep our finger on the pulse and make sure that if we need to make any changes, they're smaller changes, incremental small changes, ones that allow us to kind of stay the course throughout our career.
Small little course corrections. And I know you guys extrapolate out over 10, 20 plus years in terms of planning. I want to shift over to the shelf to your right there. I see a book on that shelf. I see a few books on that shelf. Can you talk to us a little bit about those?
So in 2004, I believe, was when Tim Pasiak, who started the company, he initially was going kind of across Canada. We have clients all across Canada, but a lot of people were asking, well, how do I incorporate? What's the benefits of incorporation? My colleagues incorporating, should I be doing that? A lot of accountants weren't aware of the benefits of incorporation because that wasn't always the case. It's something that was introduced around 20 years ago to allow for medical and dental professionals to allow a lot of opportunities and actually work within a corporate entity. So that kind of reasoning and kind of that introduction allowed us to say, you know what, we're going to write a book. And this book is going to go through all of the specifics that go into running a professional corporation. So why should I incorporate? When should I incorporate? What are some pitfalls? Running your business as an incorporated entity is going to be significantly different than running it as a proprietorship. And just so that people are aware, if you are not incorporated, you're effectively running your business as a proprietorship. You still have the ability to deduct certain expenses, but at the same time, incorporation does allow you to deduct those expenses inside the company, but also defer income that would otherwise be taxed in your personal tax rates, and kind of keep it inside the company at tax rates that are significantly lower, whether it's 11% for small business, 27% if you're over a certain threshold. So we wrote the book, and we've made a number of adjustments to it.
Why did you have to make the adjustments?
Well, not to go into too much detail, 2018 was a big change with respect to the federal government and how they addressed things like income splitting. So that was a big one. Some restrictions on passive income, i.e. investment income inside of a corporation. It really just fundamentally changed the landscape on how we would use these professional corporations. We also use an opportunity to expand it a little bit more so that it's more focused on the dental profession. We actually broke the book into 2 individual books, one for medical professionals, one for dental. And what that did is it allows us to focus a little bit more on the nuances on both of the industries. On the dental side of things, we expanded to take a look at debt repayment. So one of the big challenges for a lot of newly practicing dentists is, especially with the lines of credit growing and growing and growing, how do I get ahead of this? What's the best way of tackling this? As well, how do we deal with this in addition to maybe a federal, provincial, integrated or non-integrated student loans? So we look at all that. The buying of a practice. So purchasing a practice is, in my opinion, one of the best investments that a dentist can make. But there's a lot of nuance into doing that. Just because a practice is a good practice doesn't necessarily mean it's a good practice for you. And going into this helps us to identify what is a good practice, what kind of red flags we want to watch out for, and just what the whole purchase process looks like. Unfortunately, when we're dealing with a lot of these transitions, you're going to always have a lawyer that you've worked with. And who would you turn to? Well, I'll turn to my lawyer that I've used with for my incorporation process, my estate documents. I had an accountant as a good buddy, but for example, from university. So maybe I'll use them. And all in all, they don't necessarily have all the specifics that go into buying or selling a dental practice. And what this does is it adds a little bit more context so that you can go into it with a bit of an informed background and informed decision-making process.
So you guys are acting as sort of an advisory quarterback position, kind of coordinating between lawyers, accountants, brokers, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the big things too is, I mean, a lot of people are going to be left with a valuation that comes across their desk. And great valuations here. And we know the banks are going to lend 100% of what that valuation says. So if this practice is valued at $2 million, the bank's going to give you a check for $2 million. Now, okay, that's great. However, is this $2 million practice going to allow us to take the money that we need in order to pay off my household debt? Or I need to save up for a down payment, or I just bought a house. Can I take enough out of this practice so that I can cover my loans? And again, with interest rates rising, those are the things that the banks aren't necessarily reflecting in these kind of offers. They're saying, okay, well, this valuation says it's worth this. We know that you can at least pay us. The banks are going to get paid first, and you get whatever's left. Well, what if whatever's left isn't enough? So this, again, goes into kind of how to assess that, but it also kind of gives a nod to our broader role that what we do with clients is that, I mean, yeah, you get a valuation and then you get another valuation and you're trying to figure out what this all means. And we provide that oversight, that quarterbacking, so that we can say, okay, between these two practices, this is the one that we want to prioritize. This is why we want to prioritize it. And this is all the ducks that need to be lined up in order to get you into that practice.
So Adam, if somebody's looking at purchasing a practice, are they paying you an additional fee to kind of help guide them through that process, or is that included in their monthly fees?
Yeah, so no, that's included for everyone. So one of the key items in why we have our model the way it is, I mean, someone can work with us and we're structured on a ongoing fee basis. So initial plans, we charge a one-time fee. But if someone chooses to work with us, we have a monthly retainer, and that's how we're structured. And we address everything kind of under the sun as it pertains to the day-to-day operations and then the financial items with respect to your company, your personal goals and objectives and everything. Included in that is things like, hey, I want to join a new practice. Here's my associate agreement. Can we take a look at things and make sure that there's nothing that jumps out at you? I want to partner in with someone else, or hey, there's an opportunity to potentially buy in. All of that is going to be included. And so for some people that I've been working with for 5-6 years, we'll have gone through probably 20 different valuations to find out, well, this one's good, this one's not, and this is what would work. And we've gone through a couple offers, and some of them didn't work, some of them kind of fell through. And so there's a lot of opportunities here where we can go through the motions of what this valuation looks like. If we know that someone wants to buy a practice, but they want to do it maybe in a year or two, you don't want that first valuation that you look at in a year or two to be the only time you've ever viewed a valuation. Right.
What we want to get some reps in.
Yeah, exactly. We want to know what we're looking at so that by the time that you actually do want to kind of take a look at a practice, we know what we can compare to. We know how it's going to fit with our goals and objectives. We know the process and what it all looks like. So going through, this is what works with this practice. This is what we don't like. Here's the lease on this practice. This is why it's going to be an issue with your bank financing. The banks want to sell you insurance. Well, this is why we don't want to go this route. Let's explore CDSPI versus something else. So again, these are all things where, yeah, maybe you have an insurance agent, but are they comparing with CDSPI? Are they talking to the banks to make sure that the bank has what they need and we assign things properly? Is your accountant looking at your personal expenses to say, okay, here's what your budget is on a household basis so that you can extract enough money from this company? And most accountants aren't doing your monthly budgeting on a personal basis. Most accountants aren't saying, okay, well, we want to buy a house in 3 years. Here's how much you need to be saving. And they're not going to tell you, you should allocate this to a money market ETF or something like that. That's so far beyond what they're allowed to be discussing. It's up to you to figure it out. And again, all of these balls in the air, all of these moving pieces, without someone quarterbacking it, it ultimately falls onto the dentist.
Us.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where we can come in and kind of under a one-stop shop, we can provide all of this in terms of completely included in your ongoing service agreement. Just to make sure that you're not worrying about calling someone and getting charged a fee or anything like that. It's all included. And yeah, we can ramp up for a lot of people. Sometimes it'll be kind of low on the communication for a month or two, and then all of a sudden it'll be full steam ahead.
Boom, boom, boom. Yep.
Exactly. So, and as we know, I mean, buying and selling a practice here, there's a lot of moving pieces and there's a lot of people involved. And you need someone to ensure that absolutely everything is humming along nicely. Otherwise, you're dealing with two groups of professionals, both on the buy side and the sell side, which each have their own banker, their own accountant, their own lawyer. Some of them are taking vacations. Some of them have never done this before. Who's keeping track of all this? So that's where we really do play a pretty big role.
Awesome. For anybody listening that's kind of interested to learn more and maybe dip their toe in the water of the TPC world, where can people get that book? Is it on the shelves at Indigo or Amazon, or where should they go to pick up a copy?
It is on Amazon, but what I can do, so we have a digital copy. We also have a digital copy of the book as well. So you can buy it on our website. So tpcfinancial.com. There's an opportunity to purchase things. But what I will say is, if someone is interested in the book, I'm happy to send them a digital copy, completely complimentary. But if they do want a physical copy, we do have discount codes, and I'm happy to share that. And so my direct email is adam@tpcfinancial.com. And if anyone just wants to see a discount code or anything like that, I'm happy to send one over their way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And also a thank you. I know there's a discount for a full financial analysis for any Kakabo members that want to start working with you guys. Before we kind of wrap up here, Adam, any like top 1, 2, or 3 pieces of financial advice for dentists in this tumultuous world that we're finding ourselves in light of the current government
what I would say is get a handle on what your household needs are. And a lot of times people are looking at how much money we're earning inside of our companies or through our practice, and the money can come out. And okay, well, I don't have enough money on a household basis. Well, I'm just going to take more. I'm going to take more, and I'm going to take more. And what we do find is that spend creep is a real thing. If we know what we need on a household basis, and I'm not saying we need to have a strict budget. Sometimes budgets work for people, sometimes budgets don't. Generally, what I would suggest is find out how much you need on a monthly basis and set that as either your salary or dividends, and just make that your base. However you choose to spend that, great. I have some clients that are spending huge amounts of money on wine. Other people love to travel. I don't care how you're spending your money, but let's just find out what you're spending and try and keep it somewhat constant so that we can work backwards to say, okay, these are our savings targets on an ongoing basis. And some people don't know what they're spending. And again, it doesn't have to be specifics, just in general, I need X amount a month, and try and stick to that. That is going to be the biggest determinant of kind of how much you can set aside for long-term goals and objectives. The more you can set aside now, it's effectively paying yourself in the future. That's the way that I tend to look at things. And so that would be my number one kind of area where I would focus, is on the personal basis.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adam. For those that want a repeat of that, it was adam@tpcfinancial.com, correct?
Yes.
And the website to get the book is tpcfinancial.com.
Absolutely. Yep. And feel free. And if anyone has any questions as well, just one final thing, we do not charge at all for just having a chat. So if someone has any questions or any concerns just about a specific problem that they might have, I'm more than happy to hop on a phone and spend 10 minutes just talking through it. Not that we're charging, again, completely complimentary, but if we can give someone information without having them kind of try and research it and spend a lot of time and effort and stress to get their answers somewhere else, I'd much rather just hop on a quick call, get to know someone a little bit, and give them some general kind of pointers, or at least point them in the right direction of where to find that information.
Awesome. That's very, very gracious of you. Thank you. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Adam, and have a good weekend.
Absolutely. You as well, and enjoy the time with the little one.
You too. Take care.
Bye.